Simmons College, in collaboration with the Angela Project, presents 40 Days of Prayer for the Liberation of American Descendants of Slavery. Biblically, the number 40 represents a period of testing, trial, or probation. So we are inviting you to join us in 40 Days of Prayer as we observe this 400th anniversary of enslavement in America.
Beginning July the 12th and concluding August the 20th, Christians and justice-loving people from around the world will pause to commemorate 400 years of slavery, so we might reflect on where we have been and project a new course for race relations in America.
For each of the 40 days, there will be facts surrounding slavery and Black oppression in America, and we are the voice of one prayer declarations. Also, read the actual stories of enslaved people escaping captivity through the Underground Railroad.
We who are the American descendants of slaves realize that we did not come to this country seeking a better life. We were brought against our will to help others have a better life. It's called slavery. The first woman was a woman named Angela, and that began the sad tradition of enslavement in this country. We will pause to remember their pain and project a new future.
On August 20th, at the culmination of the 40 Days of Prayer, the ceremony book will be used in services held across this nation in commemoration of this 400th year of slavery in America. So let's go global with this initiative and show the world the power of prayer. 40 days, 400 years. Hey, St. Stephen family, here are your church announcements. It's back. Simmons College of Kentucky presents the West Louisville Forum. Join us on Wednesday, August 7th at noon as we go in, asking the question, does implicit bias exist in journalism? Mark your calendars and make plans to attend. Simmons College, in collaboration with the Angela Project, presents the 400th year commemoration ceremony on Tuesday, August 20th at noon at the St. Stephen Baptist Church. Come on out and witness a coming together of all bodies of Christ as we commemorate the 400th year of slavery in America. Live streaming will be available on the Simmons College website. Be sure to get your book today on barnesandnoble.com. Back weekend is coming up, and you definitely will want to bring a guest to this service. On August 25th, our special guest will be American gospel smooth jazz musician Ben Tankard. Mark your calendars and make plans to attend, and don't forget to bring a guest. I want to take this time to shout out one of our phenomenal members, Miss Mary Malone. Mary is a professor of nursing at Jefferson Community and Technical Colleges, and we've learned this lady is quite the trailblazer. She has been elected as the president of the Board of Mental Health America's Kentucky chapter. She is the first African American to ever hold this title. Congratulations, Mary. We are so proud of you. That's all, church family. Those are your church announcements. Till next time, church. Bye.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day.
Woo-hoo!
Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, my sisters and brothers. This is Hump Day. But you know that because you're right here with me on this Hump Day Sunday school lesson. And we are still continuing in the 40 days of commemoration, 400 years of slavery in America, of African Americans. Our week, this is a 6-week series, as you know, and we at week number 5. And it's a great lesson. It's entitled The Slave Traders. But as I alluded to last week, I told you perhaps we ought to name this lesson The Big Payback. Payday may not come every Friday or every week, but payday does come. You know, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 and 8, two of my favorite verses, it says, And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrow. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians. That's enough right there. And I love that because it lets us know that God sees, God hears, and God knows what's going on. We are living, my sisters and brothers, in such a terrible time. But God sees, God hears, and He knows. And in the scripture, He says, I am come down. That's the King James Version. I was reading out the NIV, and it says, I will come down. But the King James says that I am come down to see about my people. So actually what we are saying today is, hold on, help is on the way. There is going to be an end to all. We have talked about slavery. We talked about Hagar. We talked about Ishmael. We talked about Abraham, Sarah. We talked about Joseph. We spoke of Angela, the name of the first slave that stepped off of the ship 400 years ago. We have talked about, as I said, Joseph. We have had some very good dialogue. And we've talked about slavery. We've talked about redlining, and all the things that has gone on in this world. Well, there will be an end to slavery, mistreatment, 1% ruling everything. There will be an end to the rich getting richer, the least, the less, the lost being looked over. There will be an end to violence in our neighborhood, around the world, because we see more shootings going on, misrepresentation by elected officials. All of this is going to come to an end. Now, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and tell you, I can tell you when it's coming to an end. I cannot tell you when, but I am here to say it will come to an end. And this lesson that we have today lets us know that things that we have seen and doing and have accepted will be coming to an end. In Revelations chapter 18, we start at verse 1, and we'll go through 13. I doubt that we'll read all of it, but we just might. But we in the New King James Version, and it says, after these things. And you have to ask yourself, after what things? That means you need to back up and read some of the chapters preceding this. He said, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. So that means what is happening on earth, because the angel is coming down from heaven. And this angel has great authority. And the earth was illuminated with his glory, God's glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. Now, we probably need to stop there and identify a few things. When we say the kings of the earth, we are talking about the political system. So look at that. The political system of the earth has committed fornication with her. And then it says, and the merchants of the earth. The merchants are the economic system. And all of this, the political system, the economic system, has taken advantage of God's people. It was not God's plan. Read the scripture. It was not God's plan for 1% of the people to have everything, and all the rest of the people have to cater and bow to them. That was not God's way. If we do things God's way, how much better off we would have been. So he said, and we go back to reading verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you. Didn't I tell you it's the big payback? Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. Now let's stop and we will kind of take this apart a little bit. First of all, one thing that we need to remember, and God lets us get the point of it right here. God is sovereign. If we don't get anything else out of this lesson, remember those three words. God is sovereign. Now, the word sovereign can be used both as a noun and a verb. As a verb, it means to rule. And as a noun, it means king. So, our absolute ruler, let me put it that way, absolute ruler. So, when we say God is sovereign, he is the absolute ruler or the CEO of the universe. And when we say God is sovereign, we are saying that God is in charge of the entire universe. That's why I said CEO. Entire universe for all times. Now, so to say he is sovereign means that God can do as he please, when he pleases, how he please, and whenever he please. He does not need our permission. And what we have seen in our lessons and in today is that man has rejected God's sovereignty. And God is going to be saying to man, he is tired of seeing the system reject his people. He is tired of seeing the system being indifferent to his people. He is tired of seeing the system show impatience toward his people, thinking that you can do what you want, when you want, how you. That's God. He's the only one that can do as he pleases, when he pleases, how he pleases, whenever he pleases. Somebody needs to tell elected officials they have a time, and their time is set. And God said, I'm tired of you trying my patience. Now, and in fact, and he is going to punish. Why do we say that? Because Ecclesiastes 8:11 tells us this. Whenever evil people are not punished right away, it make others want to do evil too. Now, let me give that one to you again, because that was good. I could drop the mic on that one, y'all. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11. And I got this out of the New Century Version. See, you need to get more than one Bible. Whenever evil people are not punished right away, it makes others want to do evil too. And that's how come God is going to correct this thing. Because as long, you notice, we call it copycat. When somebody goes and shoots up a place, it's not long before somebody else does it. Because we take our time, then we, instead of correcting the situation, we talked about, well, I believe in gun rights. I believe in this right. I believe in victims having a right. And that right is to live. You don't have the right to take my life. Okay, let me get back here, because I just have that. I am sick and tired of the government that we elect and send that they represent a few are their own interests, are these big companies that make the manufacture guns or manufacture drugs or whatever the case may be. And then they, because of money, this is how come God says this economic system, the political system has to go, because nobody cares about us. All right, now I'm on my soapbox, yes, and I'm not going to apologize. Now, because, and this is what is keeping us in slavery in one form or another. You have a lot of people who are in slavery to drugs, to alcohol. And we throw money at it and say, oh, this is a serious situation. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But are we doing anything about it? We talking about it. Talk is cheap. It's time to do something about it. And so we come to see that Babylon, now they said Babylon the Great is fallen. And I don't want to offend some of you sensibility, but I could have easily said America the Great is fallen. Because America, no doubt, is great. And America is the only country I've ever lived in. Newsflash, and the only country that I want to live in. But America is not always right. I said it, and I told you I'm not going to apologize for anything that I said. America has, the leadership that we have in place has created an atmosphere of violence and hatred. And 400 years later, from the first time Angela stepped foot on the shores of the American coast, we still find some of the same things, attitudes. We thought that we had progressed, only to see that they have gone undercover, gone underground. But now, I saw a movie last night, and I thought, oops, you better tell the truth. And they said in the movie, we don't have to wear sheets anymore. We wear red caps. Whoop! And I thought, now don't make me throw my U of L hat away, because I wear a red cap too. Don't make me throw my U of L cap away. But do you see, my sisters and brothers, it has gotten so until our environment is saturated. It's all right to pull out a gun. I saw somebody, I was walking down the street and I saw this man with a gun on his hip. And I thought, oh my God, this is what we have come to. Well, guess what? I said last week, I remember what I told you. I said last week at the conclusion, I said to Pastor Ken, I said, you may not know James Brown, but James Brown in his day, you know, he was called himself, named himself Godfather of Soul, I think it was. And he had a song entitled The Big Payback. And in it he says, it's time for the big payback. I don't know karate, but I know razor. Meaning he said, I got a razor. Well, guess what? God has a sword, a two-edged sword that cuts right and left. And God is tired of the way that we are doing things. Now, the kings of the earth, let me get back to that, is the system, is the government. It is not, and notice when it falls, we are not just talking about one nation. It's global. It's global. The system around the world will fall. Governments. And it uses kings because kings are the ones who make the laws. And kings represent, in the lesson here, political systems. And so political systems will fall. Political systems. Now, and what's so bad now, let me just back you up again and go to verse 9. Verse 9. It said, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her. that means with Babylonian, will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. The kings are the political system, and there is no doubt we have a problem with our political system. I can't talk about anybody else because I live just here in the United States. But there is something wrong when the people who represent us end up in Washington, become millionaires, and they come from some of the poorest states in the United States. And yes, I'm talking about Kentucky. Kentucky ranks probably 48, 49 when it comes to wealth in all of the states. We are poor. Now, let me put it this way. We poor. Just P.O. We can't even afford the other O.R. And yet, we have elected officials who would dare become rich on Capitol Hill and on Frankfurt Hill, and they are out of touch with us. And so, yes, the political system will fall, needs to fall. You make laws that are advantageous to you. That's how come the teachers had to march on Frankfurt 4 or 5 times this year, because they have worked hard for their pension. They worked hard. And now you want to take their pension. But I don't see the legislature try to give up their pension. So yes, the political system is going to fall. There's a big payback coming. Then, the merchants of the earth. We are talking about the economic system. And the economic system are the ones, and that'll be a global fall too. They are the merchants who make the profit. They benefit from those who made the laws. In other words, let me just give it. Who is gaining most in society today? Well, we know the gas companies do, because 1 minute gas is up, and don't let there be just a talk about anything. It's amazing to me how gas can be $2.59 in the East End and $3 in the West End. There's something wrong. There is something wrong when you come across a line and everything just goes up. So, I mean, you can come to work, let's say, put it this way. You can come to work, go to work, and pass a service station, and it might have gas $2.65, and come back an hour later, and all of a sudden it's $2.89, it's $2.99. So we know that system, economic system, is working for them. We know it works for the pharmaceutical people. Medicine it's gone crazy. You sit down and you watch television and you get bombarded, and they want you to understand that you were sick and this is what you need if you need depression. And then, in other words, television is now telling us what we need to tell the doctor, the type of medication, because the pharmaceutical company is making billions of dollars. Who else? The banks, the lending institutions, the stores, everybody. And God said, and we cannot make ends meet. And so God said all these systems have got to go. Well, my sisters and brothers, I'm not going to keep you a long day because you probably done turned me off anyway. But God said this is trying his patience, because the political system and the economic system have an unholy alliance. They have come together, just like the kings and the merchants that we see here in Revelation. The political and economic have come together, systems have come together to work hand in hand. And as we come to the conclusion or close to the end of this 6-week series studying about, and let me just say that you can still pick up the book, and I suggest that you get the book, and I'm going to tell you about the ADOS commemoration that will be coming up on August the 20th. I'm going to tell you that before I sign off. But there is an unholy alliance between the political and economic system, and what they have developed has not been good for any of us, red or yellow, black or white. First of all, because it has created the experience of slavery. And slavery is simply, as we found, one person being owned legally, owning another person, and can use them as they want and not paying them. If I could get somebody to clean my house, to cut my yard, to do all that, and I wouldn't have to pay them, I could get ahead too. But guess what? I need to pay for their services. Then there were the Jim Crow laws. Now, somebody might be listening and say, "Oh, Jim Crow." I had to look this up. Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that reinforced racial segregation in the southern United States. And now, it says southern United States, but there were some Jim Crow laws in the north, but the South, at least, give them credit, they were open. And I looked up, I said, wonder what kind of Jim Crow laws existed in Kentucky. And look what I found. I found a full page here, full page there, full page there of laws in Jim Crow. Let me just give you some. 1866, miscegenation. That is the interbreeding of people considered to be of different races. In 1866, passed a law prohibiting whites from marrying any African American who is more than 12% African American. Now, there was no penalty at that particular time, but that was 1866. 1893, it was a law passed. Any marriage between a white person and an African American, didn't say what percentage this time, or mixed citizens were prohibited. That was 93. Well, in 1894, let's come on down. Any marriage between a person of color and a white person was prohibited. Let's just, in other words, we're not going to the percentage or any such thing. A person of color. See, before it had said African American or mixed citizen. Now we're just going to say a person of color or a white person was prohibited. Then it goes on. Let me see. 1908. Cohabitation of a white person and an African American without legal marriage is a felony. Oh, wait. Cohabitation, you know what that means. Of a white person and an African American without legal marriage is a felony, but you passed a law in 94 saying it was illegal to marry. So now, there ain't gonna be no living together, no sexual intercourse. We'll just make it that way. A penalty for committing such an act resulted in imprisonment from 1 month to 1 year. Well, quite next, you're going to say, you stay on your side, I stay on my side. I'm not going to prison. And it could be with or without hard labor. I'm not going to prison for that. Nobody. 1932, interracial marriages were outlawed. Invalidated interracial marriages if the parties said, let me put it this way. Let me just tell you what this one's saying. In Kentucky, all interracial marriages were outlawed. And if you were an interracial couple and you had married someplace else where it was legal and you moved to Kentucky, It was not legal. It would not be recognized. Plus, in 1932, this law said marriage between African American and Native Americans were prohibited. 1944, any marriage between a white person and an African American or racially mixed citizen was prohibited. The penalty for disobeying that law was anywhere from $500 to $5,000. And if the people continued to be interracially married, they could go to prison for up to 12 months. And that's not just it. I'm just going to stop here. But 1866, what happened? These are Jim Crow laws in Kentucky. This gave all school districts, 1866, all school district trustees were given the right to create separate schools for African American children. And then 1904, it was unlawful to maintain or operate any college or school or institution where persons of white and African American races both are allowed to attend. Now, at that time, Berea College, which was a private college, they operated, educated both African Americans and white students in a non-discriminatory manner. However, when they passed this in 1904, saying, nope, you can't do that, the Kentucky legislature passed what was called the Day Law, which prohibited African Americans and white students from receiving the same education at the same school or any school that was within 25 miles of each other. Well, Berea College went to court, and it finally went to the Supreme Court on November the 9th, 1908. And the Supreme Court upheld the Kentucky law because Berea had sued the Kentucky legislature, and because of that, it went on up to the Supreme Court. But that is just to show you that even now, yes, in Kentucky, we had here, it was supposed to be separate, but equal education. But my sisters and brothers, we were separate, but it was not equal. I got news for you. It was in 1960 when a law was passed that the races of all candidates were to be on the written ballots. The race of all. Now, I think that has been knocked down, but that was in the 60s. All races of a candidate. So, in other words, we are going to influence the voting, because when you see, oh, that's a black person, well, we're not going to vote for them. Let me go on. So over Jim Crow laws. What other unholy allowance do we see? Well, we see convict leasing, whereas that you can, if you have been convicted and held in prison, they can lease you out. You don't get the money, but they lease you to a place and you do the work and they pay the penitentiary and that. And my sister, that's an unholy alliance. Redlining, we talked about that in the past couple of weeks, where law was passed by the federal government saying if you lived in this district, you could not have certain specific financial benefits. Urban renewal. And we talked about that, and that, my sisters and brothers, if you want to see what urban renewal can and has done, I just submit to you, go out to 4th and Muhammad Ali. It was called Warner Street. and it was known as Bourbon Street for us. But now it's Muhammad Ali. It has no legacy for us. But Warner Street was a bad street in its day. But urban renewal came along and wiped out 150 black businesses in 4 years' time. And many of you didn't even know that. Mammoth Insurance, Lincoln Insurance, the Grand Theater, the Lyric Theater, Shoe Shines, other places, the banks, wiped completely old Warner Street Chili Parlor. You thought that, now there's something setting, may not even be in place now, but I saw it one day up there on 4th and Oak, and it was still called Old Warner Street. I thought, how can it be Old Warner Street Chili Parlor here at Oak Street? It used to be on Warner Street. I'm telling you, urban renewal, we thought it was going to benefit us. It wiped out, it closed down everything. 150 black businesses were lost. And then if that wasn't enough, we thought, okay, we'll name it after Americans, after Louisvillian son, Muhammad Ali. But my sisters and brothers, that's not our legacy. Now, I know Muhammad Ali. I knew him, knew his family, knew him too, but that's not our legacy. Warner Street was our legacy. Mass incarceration, that's the new Jim Crow. That's the new Jim Crow. We have, you remember the lesson that we did 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and Pharaoh said, come, let us deal shrewdly with them. And now we see, and mass incarceration is one of those things. They begin to start building, knowing how many prisons to be built, because they'll look to see how many is in the 4th grade, how many black males in the 4th grade. And so we build prisons based on that. And mass incarceration. Gentrification of urban neighborhoods. I'm on the road here today, y'all, so we're going to get through this. At 18th and Broadway, there is a building going up. There were 2 buildings going up. One was to be Passport, and one was to be the YMCA, 18th and Broadway. Then I'm just going to keep it real, keep it real. When you got to 18th and Broadway, the traffic was a mess there. It would block because to turn left off of Broadway to go on 18th Street, the lights was just a mess. It was a mess. If you come down 18th Street and Broadway, you know what it was. But now, just as soon as we get ready to put the Y, and we're going to put up Passport, then now all of a sudden we shut down 18th Street, and every time I come to 18th and Broadway, I said, why couldn't this have been done? Because you come and you just go straight on down 18th and Broadway, and the lights, you turn and everything. But before, it was so congested. Why the change? Because we're going to have the YMCA. And hey, here it is. The YMCA is not built for us, because they coming back down to the West End. There it is. If you thought it was built for you, go on, get your free membership for a little while. But when it's time to renew that membership, and it's not free, then, because come, let us deal shrewdly. But what about Passport? Do you think that they could put up and stop a building with all that structure up in a white neighborhood in the East End and just leave it like that? Okay. I see my time is up, so I have a couple of things I need to talk to you about. I want you to get this book. Get this book. Get this book. Get this book. And again, I'm not apologizing for anything that I've said. If you don't like it, way, it's the truth, and the truth has a way of hurting, but there it is. But you need this book. Stop by Simmons and pick up this book, even after the 40 days is over with of this. Still, you can need it. It has good information in it. It's an eye opener, and I said to my class, once your eyes are open, once you see, you cannot unsee something. And you also have a responsibility to see in seeing. Then on August the 20th, here at St. Stephen, 12 noon in the worship center. After all the talking we've done, so the bottom line is, so what we're going to do about it? Well, the first thing, since it started, yes, slavery started, and the church had its hands in it, it needs to start with the church. And so I invite you, encourage you, implore you to come to St. Stephen. Yes, you're going to have to come past 9th Street, but come to St. Stephen. This is not the Wild Wild West. Come to St. Stephen on August the 20th at 12 noon. It will be live streaming, national, international, for everybody, because this is not just a Kentucky thing. This is a national, international thing. It will be black and white coming together to resolve and talk about, have a 40 days. We're going to have the liberation of this American descendants of slavery, commemoration, celebration, and all we're going to do, and this is where the healing can start. I'm going to just give you just a little portion. On behalf of Europe and the Western world, we repent, that's white people, for disinvestment in the black community, whereby redlining is widely practiced with banks and insurance companies refusing to do business in black areas. And then here, blacks will say, on behalf of black people, we forgive you, until somebody says we are sorry, and the other side says we forgive you, and we repent of the hatred and forgiveness that we have held towards white people. There will not be any great America. See y'all next week.